Y continuamos en Ponte en Acción, desvelando nuevas oportunidades y poniendo el foco en otra de las claves del día y de la semana, como saben, la cumbre del clima en Bakú, que afronta su segunda y última y por tanto decisiva semana para seguir perfilando nuevos acuerdos en materia de financiación sostenible, con la esperanza de que los participantes sigan cerrando acuerdos más precisos de financiación, concretar acuerdos para que principalmente los países más pobres y por lo tanto más vulnerables al cambio climático obtengan mecanismos de financiación de los países más ricos. Hoy también ponemos el foco no solo en la cumbre del clima de Bakú, en Azerbaiyán, como saben, la COP29 también. Ponemos el foco en las inversiones sostenibles, aquellas que además de generar importantes rendimientos buscan generar impacto, una reducción de la huella de carbono. Hablamos de inversiones que tienen en cuenta criterios ambientales. Eso lo hacemos con Hans Stegeman, economista jefe de Triodos Bank. Hans, good morning, good afternoon, welcome.
Good afternoon.
Well, what is your assessment of this first week in COP29 in Baku, and what do you think will happen in this final stretch?
It's a combination, I think, of a few things. On the one hand, definitely worrying, given also the election of Trump, that you see international agreement on the need to have an agreement there is not there. So you see Argentina retreating. We see, of course, that the US doesn't know exactly what to do since Trump is not in the office yet. On the other hand, you see even China and Russia urging the US to stay there and to stay in the Paris Agreement, so that's a hopeful sign. There are some little agreements on carbon credits, for example, but the big thing that has to come in the coming days is, of course, agreement on climate finance, because this COP is about climate finance, and there the signs are not that positive.
You tell us concern, worry to Donald Trump. Do you think that the arrival of the next US president is going to make things more difficult in terms of sustainable objectives?
Definitely, at least in the US. So in the US, you will probably see a rollback of some regulations that were installed the last few years on climate and sustainability regulations in the US. So that is the negative part. I think we should not overstate that negative part, because there's already a lot going on. So I think a lot of private finance people know that renewable energy, from storage to solar panels to wind, is commercially viable, so it's attractive to finance it, so that will not stop. In terms of regulation, it will be more difficult. In terms of international agreement, definitely we have a challenge, because at the COP, it's also about the North, so the rich countries, that has to pay in some way for the poorer countries, and that kind of agreement will become more difficult in the coming years.
Hans, nowadays there is no one who does not take environmental factors into account when selecting assets or when investing. Do you see increased interest from new investors' profile? Could you tell us which are the main investment axes or the profile of projects that generate the greatest interest?
Yeah. Maybe to come back to your question, I think there are still too many investors that do not take ESG factors or sustainability factors into account. And how they do it differs quite a lot. So what we see also in Europe, that ESG, environmental social governance indicators, are mostly used as risks. So we want to exclude the risks associated with climate destruction, with social things that are socially wrong, or bad governance, which is okay, but is only in the interest of finance itself. So it gives a better return. We know it if you include those factors into your investment process. That's different, I want to say, than then the case that you want to increase sustainability in the real economy. So that means that you get different kind of decisions. And I think a lot of clients need to be a little bit more educated to understand the difference, right? So if you have an ESG product, which is kind of mainstream, a lot of passive products, so are using ESG factors, but it does not lead to, in any way, a more sustainable world. So what would help in the coming years, to come back to your question, is to educate better clients, new customer groups, what the impact actually is of the product they buy, so where they invest in. Is that like an ESG index, where you see, let's say, the top 10 of those holdings is only mostly tech. So that's mostly big tech, has nothing to do with sustainability, and the fact that they are so high is first their performance, and second, because they have a lot of really good policies in place, but I say explicitly policies in place on sustainability. That's why they rate high on ESG. That's why they often score low, relatively low in, for instance, carbon emissions, but it doesn't help in any way the sustainability transition. So educating more client groups on sustainability, what it really means to invest in sustainable products, is that really what is agreeing with their value, with their own values, what they want to achieve with their investments. I think that's the most interesting part for the coming years. And yes, then you see that especially young people, but also women, are more likely to invest in sustainable products.
Customers, young people, women. And Hans, what is your sustainable strategy at Triodos Bank? What assets or investment vehicles do you have available to the new customers?
We have listed investment funds, equity and bonds, and our investment strategy, as you might have heard in my previous answer, to do only what we call impact investing. So that means that we start with understanding what the impact of our products is in the what we call real economy. So what that money does with a sustainability transition. And only then, if we understand it and we deem it as good, and it also is aligned with our exclusionary criteria, so we don't do fossil, for instance, we don't do fast fashion, then we invest in it. And of course, we do the normal financial exercise on the expected financial performance. That's what we do like any asset manager. But we start really with that positive impact. And there's also a reason for it. It's not only that we think it's a nice product, but we think it is needed. We started with a COP. We see how difficult it is to close the financing gap on sustainability. So we say always, and that's why we have those products, that we need to mobilize more money that starts with positive impact, that starts with understanding what it does with the real economy. And on top of that, which might seem a little bit activist, but I think that's important, is to understand that all investment products, so even if you don't claim to be sustainable, you have impact on the real economy. So if you invest in fossil, you cannot claim you don't have any impact. No, you have very negative impact on sustainability. And we think it's very important that all clients, that's why I'll also give the previous answer, that clients understand all the impact that there is in investment products.
Okay, Hans Stegeman, Chief Economist of Triodos Bank, thank you very much for being with on Negocios TV.
Thank you.